Right, for more, let's speak to our U.S. correspondent Sherwin Bryce-Pease, who attended a joint briefing by the FDA and the CDC earlier today. And of course, Sherwin, this is so important because South Africa has followed suit with a temporary suspension of the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. The word from the U.S., which was also used here, that this is being done out of an abundance of caution, but obviously they are concerned to seek this pause. Just tell us what the U.S. officials are saying right now.
It's essentially a temporary pause, and one of the questions to the acting FDA Commissioner, Francis, was how long will this be? And she said a matter of days. What they are seeking to do now with this pause is really to understand if there is a connection between the 6 cases that have come to the fore. But it's worth pointing out, Francis, 6 out of 6.85 million doses of the J&J vaccine makes it statistically an insignificant number. So why then the pause, right? And we are told they are doing this so that they can educate healthcare providers, provide them with guidance as to the type of blood clots that are surfacing as a result of the J&J vaccine and what the treatment protocols will be. They talk about a standard protocol of the drug called heparin. Heparin is a drug used in standard protocol treatment for blood clots. And they're saying that heparin in this instance, in the blood clots as a result of J&J, might actually make the adverse effect worse. So they're saying don't use heparin. Let's establish what the new guidance needs to be on these sorts of blood clots in terms of the J&J vaccine. But we do expect, Francis, that this pause will be temporary and that the vaccine will come online, certainly within a matter of days, just based on the evidence, which tells us that the vast majority of people, less than 1 out of a million people, is having an adverse effect. Look, there might be more numbers that come to fruition as this is now publicized. But right now, the statistical number makes it quite insignificant in terms of the adverse effects that we are seeing.
Yeah, like you say, just 6 cases have been reported. I mean, it's serious for them and their families, but 6 out of millions. Tell us what we know about those 6 cases.
Right, so it's within an age group of between 18 and 48. So the first connection that some people were drawing is that these are women of childbearing age. So maybe there is a connection to contraception that might be being administered by individuals. The CDC, Dr. Fauci, the chief medical advisor to the president, saying they have not been able to establish whether contraceptives are having this adverse effect. They do talk, though, about the adenoviral vector vaccine, right? Similar to AstraZeneca, using a different technology as to, for example, Pfizer-BioNTech and the Moderna vaccine, which uses the mRNA. And so they're trying to establish whether the adenoviral vector vaccine is perhaps linked to these blood clots. They talk about how this virus, this vaccine, once administered into the cells, is creating an immune response in the body, Francis, and whether that immune response is then triggering the development of these blood platelets that they're talking about as being directly related to the blood clots we're seeing. So really, this pause is about establishing the facts, really coming to understand whether there are any similarities between the 6 cases that have been identified so far. I can tell you the Advisory Committee on Immunizations and Practices, this is an independent body that is attached to the Centers for Disease Control and involved in the approval of emergency use authorization of all the vaccines that have been approved in the United States. They are meeting Wednesday, that's tomorrow, to look at this case and to see if they can establish any threads between these cases. But the estimation is that the J&J vaccine will, of course, come back online within a matter of days.
Yeah, and our health minister is saying exactly the same thing. What does this mean for the administration of vaccines in the U.S.? You've kept us up to speed with that humongous vaccination rollout.
Yeah, it's a question that the officials have been answering all day. How will this affect the distribution of vaccines around the country? Almost 7 million vaccines from J&J have already been administered, and we understand that 9 million of these doses have already been distributed to the states. Now, given the guidance that they should pause the administering of those vaccines, what impact will the pause on that 9 million have? And officials from the coronavirus task force at the White House say not so much. They have about 20 23 million vaccines from Pfizer, BioNTech, and Moderna that come online on a weekly basis. So in terms of their trajectory of reaching about 200 million doses in President Biden's first 100 days, they say that is still on course to be met. They do not see this pause as having any impact really on the broader scope of U.S. distribution here. And of course, if J&J is allowed to come back into the supply chain within days, the effect is estimated to be negligible, Francis.
Sherwin, final question. I mean, it sounds like the experts have been talking, so they won't usually address psychological effects and things like that. But some people we know read sort of headline news, concerns about the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. So even if it comes back online, it adds to the sort of question mark that some people already have about vaccines. Are officials in the U.S. concerned? Are they talking about that?
Very much so. Vaccine skepticism remains a big issue here in the United States and around the world. I mean, I can talk about my own family that has some concerns about vaccines. And unfortunately, Francis, we have a very simple job, certainly as translating the science and the facts and the data that we get from these officials. And what they are telling us now is that 6 out of 6.85 million people had a negative effect to this vaccine. That in science tells you that it is statistically insignificant. That is the message that we have to keep punting here. They talk, though, officials do, about the need for transparency, and that's why they're being so overly cautious here in terms of erring on the side of caution. But let's stick to the facts until we know more. The vaccine has worked for the vast majority of people that have been administered in terms of the 6.85 million, and that should really be the focus here right now.
All right, thank you for that update from the U.S. Live from New York, Sherwin Bryce-Pease.